The plan is to get this floor professionally refinished, but before we do that, I thought I'd experiment with just doing it with a belt sander, and I've already done this patch here, and it came out pretty clean, but it's pretty slow going with this sander. I should say it was very slow when I previously tried it, but I since switched to a brand new 50 grit sanding belt, and that works much faster. Now going over it with some finer sandpaper to smooth it out. So the next thing I was thinking of is to just try to scrape the old varnish off. But that gets tiring on the arms very quickly. So my next thought was to have this on a stick, but if it's on a stick like this, I really have to push down very hard. Still hard on the arms. If I had a stick and I was pushing on it like this, then I'm pushing down and across at the same time, but I think the scraper will just have a tendency to dig into the floor and get stuck. So I still need some kind of pulling motion, and that's where this invention comes in. The scraper goes in here, and there's a nail that it pivots on, and then I have this spring that pulls back on the scraper, and then these wheels actually offset it from the ground so that hopefully I'm still pulling it along. So let's see how that goes. Well, the scraper leaves a cleaner finish, but it's definitely slower than the belt sander. So I thought I would try a carbide tipped scraper, and it should also hold its edge much longer. Oops, and I just put that in backwards. Too much spring tension. These vibrations are a real problem. I'm going to try to add some weight here, but I also need something to absorb the energy, so I'm going to put this rubber inner tube here and then hold it on there with the rubber bands, and hopefully that will be a bit like putting your finger on a piano string or a bell to just dampen it out. Oh yeah, that made a difference. And that carbide seems to be much sharper, or at least my other scraper has gotten dull. Well, I think the belt sander is still faster, but the scraper leaves a much smoother surface. I'm just going to cover what I've done so far with some varnish to see how it looks. Well, that varnish sure brings out the imperfections, like all the scratches here that didn't really show when I had it sanded. Or for instance, right here where I just didn't sand deep enough. My scraper contraption kind of worked, but the belt sander with 50 grit sandpaper was much faster. Fast enough that I decided to do the whole floor with it. When I posted a picture of this setup on Instagram, there was quite a few people telling me it's a terrible idea, but it actually seems to be working fairly fast, and so far it shows no sign of clogging up, so I figure it should be just fine for doing the whole floor here. Well, this is about as close as I could get to the edge with the Makita, which is why I bought this one, because this one goes very close to the edge. I couldn't get all the way into the corner with a belt sander, so that last little bit I'm doing with the scraper. There's quite a few spaces with large gaps, so I'm filling these with little strips of wood that I'm cutting to just the right size. And here's another gap. And this strip of wood just about fits, but it tapers down here. So I'll just taper the strip down until it fits. What works best for the smaller spacers is to just put a bunch of construction adhesive on the back of it and then squeeze the glue in that way. Now I should have worn rubber gloves while doing all that, because it took about 5 days for all the construction adhesive to finally come off my fingers after doing all those patches. 2 days later, once the glue had finally hardened, I used a small hand plane to trim all my shims flat with the surface. Though later on I switched to a scraper. That actually worked pretty good and it was much faster. As I progressed, I actually started sanding perpendicular to the grain of the wood for a while, because as the belt was getting a little bit duller, this gave it a much better bite on the wood. I also set up a box fan with the furnace filter in front of it to suck the air through it, and that helped cut down on the airborne dust a fair bit. Once I had all the varnish sanded off, I switched to sanding parallel to the wood to get it smoother, and then I switched to a finer sanding belt, and I went along every board individually to get a smooth surface. Once I was done with all the sanding, I swept sawdust across the floor, going across the boards instead of along them to try to fill any remaining gaps with sawdust as well as possible. And I didn't vacuum the floor beyond that before varnishing to make sure that that sawdust stayed in the gaps. I made a simple squeegee-like brush by folding up a piece of disposable shop towel and clamping that to another board that was on the end of a stick. I put the first coat of varnish on by mostly sweeping across the boards instead of along them, again in the hope that the sawdust in the cracks would stay in there. Once that varnish had dried, there was all kinds of little bumps on it. I imagine that's probably because there was dust left on it from not vacuuming the floor. It's necessary to sand wood after the first coat of varnish anyways, because it makes all the fibers stand up, but I decided to go at it with a scraper instead, just to make sure I'd catch all the bumps in the varnish. And then I went over the whole floor with a piece of sandpaper. I thought about putting a sanding pad at the end of a stick, but going over it like this, I was able to see any flaws that needed extra attention much better. At first I thought my sawdust gap filling method didn't quite work, but then I realized those gaps were in fact filled with sawdust, but the sawdust and varnish ended up just being very dark. So in the worst spots I ended up scraping what was in there back out and filling it with wood putty to match the color a bit better. This would have been much easier to do before I applied varnish. Live and learn. I applied the second coat of varnish going parallel to the boards, but this time around I worked in a different direction, and as such I couldn't see the reflection against the light as well as I did the first coat, which means I actually missed a couple of spots. And this time I still had some bumps in the varnish, so I went over it again with a scraper but this time with a very thin and flexible scraper. And after that, another light sanding with 120 grit sandpaper. And with this being the final coat, I was very careful to vacuum the whole floor, get every speck of dust. I put the last coat on with a regular brush. This took way longer, but I was able to get a much more consistent thickness of coat on there. Final coat is done. Behold the gleaming imperfection. So this thing worked well enough for me to do the whole floor with, but if you're refinishing your own floor, I'd recommend just renting a flooring sander, because that would be much faster than this. But if you do rent a flooring sander, you'll also have to rent an edging sander to the edges with, and if you have to rent one of those for just 2 days, you're better off actually buying one of these belt sanders, so this may be a good investment. This definitely isn't a guide for how to finish a floor, but I hope you learn from some of my mistakes, and maybe the takeaway is paying somebody $5 a square foot to refinish a floor is actually not such a bad deal.
Hello, I'm Ben Osborne from howtosandafloor.com. In this video I'm going to show you how to refinish a floor without sanding. Now ideally when you do this you're going to have a floor that's not too damaged, it's only got surface level scratches, very superficial damage. If there's too many dents and scratches then it needs a full sand in order to remove them and then to refinish. But this is an ideal example, it looks very worn on the surface. And it's perfect for what I call a buff and a coat. The first thing you need to do is rough off the surface of the floor or slightly key it. What you need is a 120 grit bit of sandpaper. I'm going to be using a buffer, but I'm just going to quickly demonstrate how to use a little bit of sandpaper if you haven't got a buffer. So what you do is you take 3 boards at a time and you sand with the grain all the way along. So this is just a demonstration, so I'm not going to start in there. Make sure you get into the corners. Don't apply too much pressure. Just very quickly and lightly, covering the whole area. And then once you're done, you move to the next 3 boards. Don't do too much so that you can't reach what you're doing. So there's the general idea with the 120 grit paper. Now what I'm going to use is a 120 grit mesh underneath my buffing machine. So you basically just put this down like that, put your plate over it, and away you go. If you do use a buffing machine, you don't want to go too fast and you don't want to go too slow. You don't need to key it that much. You don't want to take too much off the surface, but a fairly quick pace, pretty much how I'm doing it at the moment. Done. Now the next thing you want to do is hoover the floor. You need to make sure that you do it methodically, smoothly, slowly, and go around the edges. I'm going to demonstrate exactly how to do it. Just make sure that the floor is completely clear before you go on with the oil or lacquer. Once you've sanded hoovered the main body of the floor, it's important to get around the edges, because when you brush, you're going to be pulling out dust from underneath the skirting and out from the edges where the hoover hasn't managed to get. So now I'm going to be applying the oil. It's important to distinguish whether your floor has previously been lacquered or oiled, because there's going to be compatibility issues if you put oil onto a floor that's been previously lacquered, or when it was manufactured it was lacquered, or if by putting a lacquer onto an oiled floor you get the same sorts of problems, delamination, discoloration, and it's just good to get things to match up. And I know that this floor has previously been oiled, and it was originally oil when it was laid. So make sure that you make that distinction. Also, you can learn how to do the oiling or lacquering on my other video, how to lacquer or oil a floor. So let's get going. If you are oiling, remember to give it a good stir beforehand so that it's ready for you to go. Obviously you want to be careful not to cover your skirting in oil. And that is how to refinish a floor without sanding. If you found this video helpful, please click like underneath this video, and also check out the rest of our videos on the YouTube channel or on our website howtosandthefloor.com.
Hi guys, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. So it's Saturday morning here and my house is a tip. I don't think I've ever seen it look this bad, and I'm embarrassed that I'm actually about to show you this on the internet, but I guess everybody's house gets like this from time to time, doesn't it? I have got such a busy week next week that today is my only real chance to do this. So I thought I'd kill two birds with one stone. You guys seem to really enjoy my cleaning videos for some reason, so I thought I would do an extreme clean of the whole house from bottom to top. Should be from top to bottom, shouldn't it? Anyway, I'm starting in the kitchen and I'm going to film it for you as well, so I really hope you enjoy it. Please excuse the mess. Sounds like such a stupid thing to say. But hopefully by the end of it we're going to have our clean, tidy, cozy house back. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I'm just gonna get straight into it. Wish me luck.
There's no use in looking back. Gotta laugh or gotta live, 'cause I'm so over the past, and I'm living it fast. Underneath the strobe lights, ready for a crazy night. I can hear your heartbeat banging loud like a drum. Let me be your only one. Do you feel what I feel? I'm addicted to the sound. Turn it loud, just make it play. When the love is all around, dream away with the music. Flying higher than the stars, we'll be dancing till the dawn. The night is young, so are we. So close your eyes and set it free. Underneath the strobe lights, ready for a crazy night. I can hear your heartbeat banging loud like a drum. Let me be your only one. Do you feel what I feel? I'm addicted to the sound. Turn it loud, just make it play. When the love is all around, dream away with the music. I'm There's no use in looking back. Gotta laugh or gotta live, 'cause I'm so over the past, and I'm living it fast. Underneath the strobe lights, ready for a crazy night. I can hear your heartbeat banging loud like a drum. Let me be your only one. Do you feel what I feel? I'm addicted to the sound. Turn it loud, just make it play. When the love is all around, dream away with the music. Flying higher than the stars, we'll be dancing till the dawn. The night is young, so are we. So close your eyes and set it free.
Right, so I've just finished downstairs. That took me a lot longer than I thought because I've really properly spring cleaned it. So it's a bit dull outside, so I apologise if it's dark up here, but I just want to show you upstairs before I start, because honestly it looks like I've set this up for this video to make it look as bad as possible. I promise this is how it was when I woke up this morning. It's awful. Archie has tipped all of their toy bags out. This is his room. And then this is our room. It is disgraceful. It never really gets this bad, but I was filming videos and then obviously this all happened. I think he had a party this morning. And it's just got to this point, so it's time to put it back to normal.
I was standing outside waiting for you. You were always taking time, baby, playing it through. I was calling out your name, with my eyes on the wall. You were running like a ghost from me. You were running from it all. You got me waiting, I'm on fire. You got me waiting, my desire. Keep on moving to the purpose now, to the ending of the ocean. Keep on moving to the purpose now, to the ending of the ocean. You've been playing my mind lately, turning it around. Once I thought you were mine, baby, we're safe and sound. You got me waiting, I'm on fire. You got me waiting, my desire. I follow your heartbeat. Keep on moving to the purpose now, to the ending of the ocean. Keep on moving to the purpose now, to the ending. I follow your heartbeat away, away, away. I follow your heartbeat away. Keep on moving to the purpose now, to the ending of the ocean. I was standing
So it's about 6:30 now and I think I'm officially defeated. I'm pretty much done, but there's just a couple of bits I've got to do, but the boys are going to bed, so I kind of need to wrap up. I've just hoovered everywhere and I'll just show you what it looks like. I might try and do a little bit more once I've gone to bed because I need to put our sheets back on and everything, but I'm pretty much done and I'm really pleased with it. So apart from our bed, our room is completely done. As you can see, it's dark now. So yeah, everywhere's tidy in here. Archie's bedroom's completely done. And then in Elliot's room, it's pretty much there. The only thing I need to do in his and our room is go through this pile of clothes because he's grown out of loads of clothes now, so I've just got to sort that out and sort the drawers out, but that can be a job for another day. And the only things I didn't get around to showing you were cleaning the bathroom and the downstairs toilet, but I can do those in the morning. I'm not too worried about that. Like I've showed you basically everything else. So I think I'm gonna go and sleep for about 12 hours now. I'm exhausted, but it's a good job done. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.
Turn it around. Once I thought you were mine.